Hello, I'm Robin Harrison, B2B editor at Clarion Gaming, and I'm here at IGB Live in Amsterdam with Melanie Ellis of Northridge Law. With the unfolding chaos at the centre of the British government, what do you think this means for publication of the Gambling Act white paper?
I think inevitably it's going to be delayed. There might be some temptation on the government to release it to distract from everything else that's going on, but I don't think it's a big enough news story to do that. So, ultimately we don't know what's going to happen. We may end up having a general election. Who knows what the outcome of that would be. Ultimately, I think there is broad cross-party support for a review of gambling laws, so I think we will still see the Gambling Act review, but it might be later in the year now.
And then in the run-up to this review, do you think the industry made a strong enough case to be trusted as the government worked in this kind of document?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, on the one hand, we've seen record fines and regulatory settlements for gambling operators since the review was announced, but then on the other hand, we have had reducing problem gambling rates, at least according to the Gambling Commission's statistics. So, I think there have been genuine efforts by the industry to protect vulnerable customers. Ultimately, I'm not sure if it's about trust in the industry. The point of regulation is to set minimum standards, and it's for the regulator to enforce those. So, if as a society we're not happy with the standards and how they're being met, then either we need to raise those standards, or perhaps we need to look to the regulator and whether they're doing enough to enforce what is already in place.
We've also had a lot of talk about affordability checks and single customer view. And so what's your opinion on the industry's ability to effectively integrate these sort of additional kind of safeguards? Is there enough clarity from government and from the Gambling Commission on what this would actually entail, without becoming a kind of a blocker to a kind of people who want to gamble kind of sustainably?
I mean, the short answer is no. I don't think the Gambling Commission has been clear enough on what affordability checks should entail. Really, all it has said, looking at the latest customer interaction guidance, is that unaffordable gambling is a trigger for interaction. It's an indicator that somebody may have be at risk from gambling harm. So that doesn't really tally up with what's actually being said by employees of the Gambling Commission in compliance activity. So in compliance assessments, some operators are being told that they really need to be getting 3 months of bank statements, P60s, pay slips from any customer to justify gambling over the sort of national average discretionary spend, but that's not actually set out in writing. So, we've kind of got a system where operators who have recently been through compliance activity have got quite strict procedures in place. Others have just tried to interpret the guidance and perhaps have something not quite so onerous. And if you look at the stricter measures that some have in place because that's what they've been told by the Gambling Commission they need, I think those will drive customers to offshore operators to the black market. So what we really do need the clarity from the government in the Gambling Act review to actually say what needs to be in place so everybody can have a sort of a common standard.
And there's been a lot of talk about heftier penalties for non-compliant operators, but has there been enough direction on what the industry must do to ensure it's upholding these standards? Because we do hear a lot of talk about raising standards, but without really setting out what that entails.
Yeah, so again, I don't think the Gambling Commission has been clear enough. Operators, I believe, for the most part, are doing their best to meet the standards. But, I mean, for example, the Gambling Commission compliance activity, the public statements that it puts out, you'll see examples of customers who were allowed to spend, certain amounts of money without the operator setting limits, but that there is nothing in the LCCP or the guidance really to say that all customers have to be subject to a limit on their gambling. And then when operators are going through compliance activity, it's very difficult for them to challenge the Gambling Commission on this because they have to demonstrate insight into their failings in order to, to try and reduce the penalty that will be applied. So, in doing so, they have to accept that they haven't met standards that were set up by the Commission. So, the Commission, I think, believes that it's been clear on what the standards are, but the reality is operators are doing their best, but not fully understanding what the expectations are.